Okay, tonight is the 23rd of July. This is the 8th night. We're talking on the Dīgha Nikāya suttas. Now we come to sutta number 13, Tevijja sutta, the threefold knowledge. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was touring Kosala with a large company of some 500 monks. He came to a Kosalan Brahmin village called Manasakata and stayed to the north of the village in a mango grove on the bank of the river Achiravati. And at that time, many very well-known and prosperous Brahmins were staying at Manasakata, including Chanki, Taruka, Pokrasati, Janusoni and Todeya. And Vaseta and Bharadvaja went strolling along the road. And as they did so, an argument broke out between them on the subject of right and wrong paths. The young Brahmin Vaseta said, "This is the only straight path. This is the direct path, the path of salvation that leads one who follows it to union with Brahma, as is taught by the Brahmin Pokrasati." And the young Brahmin Bharadvaja said, "This is the only straight path, etc., as taught by the Brahmin Taruka." And Vaseta could not convince Bharadvaja, nor could Bharadvaja convince Vaseta. Then Vaseta said to Bharadvaja, "This ascetic Gotama is staying to the north of the village, and concerning this blessed Lord, a good report has been spread about, etc., etc. Let us go to the ascetic Gotama and ask him, and whatever he tells us, we shall accept." And Bharadvaja agreed. Stop here for a moment. This two pupils of two famous teachers, two famous Brahmin teachers, they were arguing. One says that his teacher is teaching the right path to union with Brahma. You must remember that this Brahma, according to the Brahmins, is God, the creator God. So whenever you see them talking about Brahma, you just think that what they mean is God. So one is saying that his teacher is teaching the correct path to heaven, to God, whereas the other one says his teacher is teaching the right one. But they agreed that they should consult the Samana Gotama, the Buddha, because Buddha has a very good reputation, and they believe that he is enlightened. So the two of them went to see the Lord. Having exchanged courtesies with him, they sat down to one side. And Vaseta said, "Reverend Gotama, as we were strolling along the road, we got to discussing right and wrong paths. I said, 'This is the only straight path, etc., as is taught by the Brahmin Pokrasati.' And Bharadvaja said, 'This is the only straight path, as is taught by the Brahmin Taruka. This is our dispute, our quarrel, our difference.' And the Buddha said, 'So Vaseta, you say that the way to union with Brahma is that taught by the Brahmin Pokrasati, and Bharadvaja says that it is that taught by the Brahmin Taruka. What is the dispute, the quarrel, the difference all about?' Right and wrong paths, Reverend Gotama. There are so many kinds of Brahmins who teach different paths. The Adharya, the Titiriya, the Chandoka, the Chandava, the Brahmacharya Brahmins. Do all these ways lead to union with Brahma? Just as if there were near a town or village, many different paths, do all these come together at that place? And likewise, do the ways of the various Brahmins lead the one who follows them to union with Brahma?" And the Buddha said, "You say they lead, Vaseta?" And he said, "I say they lead, Reverend Gotama." Second time the Buddha said, "You say they lead, Vaseta?" And the second time Vaseta said, "I say they lead, Reverend Gotama." Third time the Buddha asked him, "You say they lead, Vaseta?" And he said, "I say they lead, Reverend Gotama." So sometimes you see when the Buddha is arguing with some Brahmins, he makes them say 3 times what they profess. But Vaseta, is there then a single one of these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, who has seen Brahma face to face? No, Reverend Gotama. Then has the teacher's teacher of any one of them seen Brahma face to face? No, Reverend Gautama. Then has the ancestor 7 generations back of the teacher of one of them seen Brahma face to face? No, Reverend Gautama. Well then, Vaseta, what about the early sages of those Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, the makers of the mantras, the expounders of the mantras, whose ancient verses are chanted, pronounced, and collected by the Brahmins of today, and sung and spoken about, such as Ataka, Vammaka, Vammadeva, Vesamita, Yamatagi, Angirasa, Bharadvaja, Vaseta, Kassapa, Bhagu? Did they ever say, we know and see when, how, and where Brahma appears? No, Reverend Gautama. So Vaseta, not one of these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, has seen Brahma face to face, nor has one of their teachers, or teachers' teachers, nor even the ancestor 7 generations back of one of their teachers. Nor could any of the early sages say, we know and see when, how, and where Brahma appears. So what these Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas are saying is, we teach this path to union with Brahma that we do not know or see. This is the only straight path leading to union with Brahma. What do you think, Vaseta? Such being the case, does not what these Brahmins declare turn out to be ill-founded? Yes, indeed, Reverend Gautama. Well, Vaseta, when these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, teach a path that they do not know or see, saying, this is the only straight path, this cannot possibly be right. Just as a file of blind men go on, clinging to each other, and the first one sees nothing, the middle one sees nothing, and the last one sees nothing. So it is with the talk of these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas. The first one sees nothing, the middle one sees nothing, the last one sees nothing. The talk of these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, turns out to be laughable, mere words, empty and vain. Stop here for a moment. So sometimes people who are not well read in the suttas, they think the Buddha is so compassionate that he won't criticize people. But here you can see the Buddha is indeed very blunt. Here he's saying that all these Brahmins, they claim to teach the way to union with Brahma, but they have never seen Brahma. They don't know where Brahma is going to appear, when he's going to appear, how he's going to appear, etc. And yet they say they teach a path to be with Brahma. So the Buddha says this is laughable, mere words, empty and vain. What do you think, Vaseta? Do these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, see the sun and moon just as other people do? And when the sun and moon rise and set, do they pray, sing praises and worship with clasped hands? They do, Reverend Gautama. What do you think, Vaseta? These Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, who can see the sun and moon just as other people do, can they point out a way to union with the sun and moon, saying this is the only straight path that leads to union with the sun and moon? No, Reverend Gautama. So Vaseta, these Brahmins, learned in the 3 Vedas, cannot point out a way to union with the sun and moon, which they have seen. And 2, none of them has seen Brahma face to face, nor has even the ancestor 7 generations back of one of their teachers. Nor could any of the early sages say, we know and see when, how, and where Brahma appears. Does not what these Brahmins declare turn out to be ill-founded? Yes, indeed, Reverend Gautama. So here the Buddha is saying that even the sun and moon, which they can see, yet they cannot teach a path to union to union with the sun and moon, to reach the sun and moon. So why talk about Brahma, which they even cannot see? So it's even the possibility of teaching a path to Brahma is even worse. What if they can already see, they can't teach you to reach the sun and moon. What more if they cannot see? Vaseta, it is just as if a man were to say, I'm going to seek out and love the most beautiful girl in the country. They might say to him, do you know what caste she belongs to? And he says, no. Well, do you know her name, her clan, whether she is tall or short, dark or light complexion, or where she comes from? And he says, no again. And they might say, well then, you don't know or see the one you seek for and desire. And he would say, no. Does not the talk of that man turn out to be stupid? Certainly, Reverend Gautama. Then Vaseta, it is like this. Not one of these Brahmins has seen Brahma face to face, nor has one of their teachers, even the early sages. Does not the talk of the Brahmins turn out to be stupid? And he says, yes indeed, Reverend Gautama. That is right, Vaseta. When these Brahmins learned in the three Vedas teach a path that they do not know and see, this cannot possibly be right. So here you see again that Buddha is so blunt, saying that these Brahmins are stupid. Vaseta, it is just as if a man were to build a staircase for a palace at a crossroads. People might say, this staircase for a palace, do you know whether the palace will face east or west, north or south, or whether it will be high, low, or one of medium height? And he would say no. And they might say, well then, you don't know or see what kind of a palace you are building the staircase for? And he would say no. Does not the talk of that man turn out to be stupid? Certainly, Reverend Gautama. Vaseta, it is just as if this river Achiravati were brimful of water, so that a crow could drink from it, and a man should come along wishing to cross over, to get to the other side, to get across, and standing on this bank were to call out, come here, other bank, come here. What do you think, Vaseta? Would the other bank of the river Achiravati come over to this side on account of that man's calling, begging, requesting, or wheedling? No, Reverend Gautama. Well now, Vaseta, those Brahmins learned in the three Vedas who persistently neglect what a Brahmin should do and persistently do what a Brahmin should not do, declare, we call on Indra, Soma, Varuna, Isana, Pajapati, Brahma, Mahidi, Yama. But such Brahmins who persistently neglect what a Brahmin should do will, as a consequence of their calling, begging, requesting or wheedling, attain after death, at the breaking up of the body, to union with Brahma. That is just not possible. Stop here for a moment. I just reminds us how some people pray to God and all these things. So it's a bit similar here. Vaseta, it is just as if this river Achiravati were brimful of water, so that a crow could drink out of it, and a man should come wishing to cross over. But he was bound and pinioned on this side by a strong chain, with his hands behind his back. What do you think, Vaseta? Would that man be able to get to the other side? No, Reverend Gautama. In just the same way, Vaseta, in the Aryan discipline, these 5 strands of sense desire are called bonds and fetters. Which 5? Forms seen by the eye, which are agreeable, loved, charming, attractive, pleasurable, arousing desire. Sounds heard by the ear, smells smelled by the nose, taste savored by the tongue, contacts felt by the body, which are agreeable, etc., arousing desire. These 5 in the Aryan discipline are called bonds and fetters. And Vaseta, those Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas are enslaved, infatuated by these 5 strands of sense desire, which they enjoy guiltily, unaware of danger, knowing no way out. But that such Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas, who persistently neglect what a Brahmin should do, who are enslaved by these 5 strands of sense desire, knowing no way out, should attain after death, at the breaking up of the body, to union with Brahma. That is just not possible. So here the Buddha is saying that these Brahmins are enslaved by the 5 strands of sensual desire, which bind them to the sensual realm. But the Brahma in the form realm, he does not indulge in the sense pleasures, as the Buddha will say very soon. It is just as if this river Achiravati were brimful of water, so that a crow could drink out of it, and a man should come along wishing to cross over, and were to lie down on this bank, covering his head with a shawl. What do you think, Vaseta? Would that man be able to get to the other side? No, Reverend Gautama. In the same way, Vaseta, in the Aryan discipline, these 5 hindrances are called obstacles, hindrances, coverings up, envelopings. Which 5? The hindrance of sensuality, of ill will, of sloth and torpor, of worry and flurry, of doubt. These 5 are called obstacles, hindrances, coverings up, envelopings. And these Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas are caught up, hemmed in, obstructed, entangled in these 5 hindrances. But that such Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas, who persistently neglect what a Brahmin should do, and who are caught up, entangled in these 5 hindrances, should attain after death, at the breaking up of the body, to union with Brahma. That is just not possible. Stop here for a moment. This Brahma, the Buddha is saying, is not enveloped by the 5 hindrances. And we know from the suttas that Brahma is in the first jhana heaven. And if a person wants to be reborn in the first jhana heaven, he has to attain the first jhana. And when he attains the first jhana, then the 5 hindrances disappear, as we heard earlier in the earlier suttas. The Buddha gave many similes to make us understand that the 5 hindrances are permanently got rid of. Just as a man is freed from prison, who was, or a man who was a slave is freed from the bonds of slavery, etc. What do you think, Vaseta? What have you heard said by Brahmins who are venerable, aged, the teachers of teachers? Is Brahma encumbered with wives and wealth, or unencumbered? Unencumbered, Reverend Gautama. Is he full of hate or without hate? Without hate, Reverend Gautama. Is he full of ill will or without ill will? Without ill will, Reverend Gautama. Is he impure or pure? Pure, Reverend Gautama. Is he disciplined or undisciplined? Disciplined, Reverend Gautama. What do you think, Vaseta? Are the Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas encumbered with wives and wealth, or unencumbered? Encumbered, Reverend Gautama. Are they full of hate or without hate? Full of hate, Reverend Gautama. Are they full of ill will or without ill will? Full of ill will, Reverend Gautama. Are they impure or pure? Impure, Reverend Gautama. Are they disciplined or undisciplined? Undisciplined, Reverend Gautama. So, Vaseta, the Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas are encumbered with wives and wealth, and Brahma is unencumbered. Is there any communion, anything in common between these encumbered Brahmins and the unencumbered Brahma? No, Reverend Gautama. That is right, Vaseta, that these encumbered Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas should, after death, at the breaking up of the body, be united with the unencumbered Brahma. That is just not possible. Likewise, do these Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas and full of hate, full of ill will, impure, undisciplined, have any communion, anything in common with the disciplined Brahma? No, Reverend Gautama. That is right, Vaseta, that these undisciplined Brahmins should, after death, be united with Brahma is just not possible. But these Brahmins learned in the 3 Vedas, having sat down on the bank, sink down despairingly, thinking maybe to find a dry way across. Therefore, their threefold knowledge is called the threefold desert, the threefold wilderness, the threefold destruction. I'll stop here for a moment. Again, here you see how blunt the Buddha is. He calls the threefold knowledge the threefold desert, threefold wilderness, threefold destruction. So, as I mentioned, people who think the Buddha is so compassionate, cannot scold people, cannot criticize people, and they have to learn the suttas again. So here, this passage about how the Brahmins are encumbered with wives, with wealth, etc., reminds me of the Christian Bible. In the Christian Bible, Jesus gave a simile. Jesus said, It's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God than for the camel to go through the eye of the needle. So, Jesus being a sage, a renunciant, one on the holy path, he also understands that all these, if you want to attain a higher state, you cannot be encumbered with wives and wealth and be in discipline and all that. At these words, Vaseta said, Reverend Gotama, I have heard them say the ascetic Gotama knows the way to union with Brahma. What do you think, Vaseta? Suppose there were a man here born and brought up in Manasakata, and somebody who had come from Manasakata and had missed the growth should ask him the way. Would that man, born and bred in Manasakata, be in a state of confusion or perplexity? No, Reverend Gotama. And why not? Because such a man would know all the paths. And the Buddha said, Vaseta, it might be said that such a man, on being asked the way, might be confused or perplexed. But the Tathagata, on being asked about the Brahma world and the way to get there, would certainly not be confused or perplexed. For Vaseta, I know Brahma, the world of Brahma, and the way to the world of Brahma, and the path of practice whereby the world of Brahma may be gained. At this, Vaseta, stop here for a moment. So here you see the Buddha is so sure of himself. He says he not only knows Brahma, he knows the world of Brahma and the way to the world of Brahma and how to practice the path there to attain the world of Brahma. At this, Vaseta said, Reverend Gotama, I have heard them say the ascetic Gotama teaches the way to union with Brahma. It would be good if the Reverend Gotama were to teach us the way to union with Brahma. May the Reverend Gotama help the people to attain the way with Brahma. Then Vaseta, listen, pay proper attention, and I will tell you. Very good, sir, said Vaseta. The Lord said, Vaseta, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma, which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth, practices the moralities, etc., as in the Sutta number 2, the various factors of charana, and attains the first jhana. Then with his heart filled with loving kindness, he dwells suffusing 1/4, the second, the third, the fourth. Thus he dwells suffusing the whole world, upwards, downwards, across, everywhere, always with a heart filled with loving kindness, abundant, unbounded, without hate or ill will. Just as if a mighty trumpeter were with little difficulty to make a proclamation to the 4 quarters. So by this meditation, Vaseta, by this liberation of loving kindness by the mind, he leaves nothing untouched, nothing unaffected in the sensuous sphere. This Vaseta is the way to union with Brahma. Then with his heart filled with compassion, with joy, with equanimity, he dwells suffusing 1/4, the second quarter, the third, the fourth quarter. Thus he dwells suffusing the whole world, upwards, downwards, across, everywhere, always with a heart filled with compassion, joy, equanimity, abundant, unbounded, without hate or ill will. Just as if a mighty trumpeter were with little difficulty to make a proclamation to the 4 quarters. So by this meditation, Vaseta, by this liberation of compassion by the mind, liberation of joy by the mind, liberation of equanimity by the mind, he leaves nothing untouched, nothing unaffected in the sensuous sphere. This Vaseta is the way to union with Brahma. Stop here for a moment. So here you see how the Buddha teaches to practice the radiation of loving kindness, radiation of compassion, of joy and equanimity. First, the Buddha's method, first you must attain the first jhana. After you have attained the first jhana, you develop the jhana, as the Buddha described in the earlier suttas, to suffuse the whole body with this piti and sukha, so that not a part of the body is without this piti and sukha. Then, having developed the first jhana, then only a person can radiate this loving kindness out. First 1/4 of the world, second, third, fourth quarter, the whole world irradiates this. This is not the way that nowadays a lot of monks teach, but this is the real way taught by the Buddha to radiate loving kindness. What do you think, Vaseta? Is a monk dwelling thus encumbered with wives and wealth, or unencumbered? Unencumbered, Reverend Gotama. Is he without hate or with hate? Without hate, Reverend Gotama. Is he with ill will or without ill will? Without ill will, Reverend Gotama. Is he pure and disciplined or impure and undisciplined? Is pure and disciplined, Reverend Gotama. Then Vaseta, the monk is unencumbered and Brahma is unencumbered. Has that unencumbered monk anything in common with the unencumbered Brahma? Yes, indeed, Reverend Gotama. That is right, Vaseta. Then that an unencumbered monk, after death, at the breaking up of the body, should attain to union with the unencumbered Brahma. That is possible. Likewise, a monk without hate, without ill will, pure, disciplined, after death, at the breaking up of the body, should attain with union with Brahma. That is possible. At this, the young Brahmins, Vaseta and Bharadvaja, said to the Lord, "Excellent, Reverend Gotama, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who had got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place, so that those with eyes could see what was there." Just so, the Reverend Gotama has expounded the Dhamma in various ways. We take refuge in the Reverend Gotama, in the Dhamma and in the Sangha. May the Reverend Gotama accept us as lay followers, having taken refuge from this day forth as long as life shall last. That's the end of the sutta. So you see how the Buddha can make the Brahmins see that all their talk about the threefold knowledge is all rubbish. And their claim to teach the way to union with Brahma is also utter rubbish. So because the Buddha is so blunt, a lot of Brahmins don't like the Buddha. Even up to today, I have met some Brahmins when they learned that when I was younger, before I renounced, my good friend's father-in-law, when he heard that I was very interested in Buddhism, he started to criticize the Buddha. I think tonight I'll stop here because the next sutta is fairly long, and also my voice is not so good. Anything to discuss? Can I ask any question?
With respect to abandoning sense desires, seeing, hearing, all that stuff, but why?
Actually, the Buddha means not to be attached to sense desires, because the Buddha also sees forms, the Buddha also hears sounds and all that, but he knows the danger, because any of the sense objects, when it is pleasant, then pleasant feelings arise. And the Buddha says there is a tendency to crave for it, to want to see again, to want to hear that beautiful sound again, smell, taste, and touch. So if you crave for it, but this world, everything is impermanent. Sometimes you can get it, sometimes you can't get it. So when it goes away, if you are too attached to it, suffering will arise. So the point is not to be too attached to it. A very good example is like if people are very attached to their wealth, and then when their economy goes bad and all their shares are worthless, and then their empire collapses, and then they commit suicide because they can't accept it. But they forget that life is more important than all the wealth in the world. If you have life, you can always build up your empire again.
Yes. People love that, but not.
Say again. Practice for many years. Not necessary, but if when in robes he broke one of the major precepts like sexual intercourse or stealing something worth money valuable or killing somebody then he will go to the woeful plane of rebirth. There are certain things when a person wears the robe he cannot do, but when he disrobes he can do. So if he keeps to that regulation, when he is wearing the robe, certain things he cannot do, he don't do. Then after that, if he disrobes and he does the things that a layman can do, then it's okay. But usually if a monk has worn the robe for many years and after he disrobes, he will realize his weakness and he will regret.
The Buddha mentioned, besides not sharing with an activity that we know of good Dhamma and not sharing with others, he says that before you and with a heart full of hatred. Likewise, he describes as a person who he took his personality as an example, that not doing anything to others is a heart full of hatred. And when you think why the Buddha uses strong words, because I would think that this is being attached to this being very attached to our possessions that we're not willing to share with others, but this is just because of hatred.
Well, you can say that if a person does not want to give anything away, which is what the Buddha meant, then you can say he has hatred for people, because even an animal will share with other animals if they have enough. And if a person, even though he's selfish, even his close family members, he will share. But what the Buddha means is that if this person doesn't share anything at all, then he must have a lot of hatred. Sutta 5, 12,
Verse 18, there was a teacher who was contact, and he teaches, let's say, only to a group of students at center who doesn't listen to his teaching. The teacher would come to that to believe, for example, the teacher is wicked. To come to a center where the students are not listening. Will this teacher fall into this?
No, because If he knows that his pupils don't want to listen and he keeps trying to teach them, then he falls into that category. But if he goes there not knowing that they are not going to listen to him, then after that, he knows he should not go back there.
The four Dhamma in order to practice, to have a heart full of metta, because one of the is an arahant, to be free from asaras, so this metta will be the strongest in compact to Tevijja. So I think that we have to ask on the jhana. Say that jhana is when a person is in jhana, the hindrances is not present, for example, usually. So if we compare to a first jhana person and a fourth jhana person, would there be any difference in metta?
In what?
The metta, the strength of a person's metta. Because to have true metta is selfless love. That means if we still have very strong self, our metta would not be so pure.
No, that is different because you are talking about everyday metta. This sutta is talking about radiating metta. Radiating metta and having everyday metta is different.
So, Bhante, what is the difference between a radiating metta, a first jhana person, compared to a fourth jhana person?
Fourth jhana person, he has a stronger jhana, so probably he can radiate much further away. Person just like a person who has newly developed the heavenly eye, he can see only a very limited distance. And then like the Buddha, he has developed until he's quite unlimited. So in the same way, a person who has just developed memory of past life, then he can recall one life, two lives. But if his concentration is strong, like the fourth jhana, then he might be able to see much further.
Something is abandoned and unbounded. So wondering what is unbounded. That means the strength which then is still not.
Not like a person who has first jhana and his radiation of metta cannot be like the Buddha.
Maybe a person who is free from asaras, his arahant, his radiation of metta is very different from a person, for example, a first state area, is able to practice the form state.
Should be different because arahant, his concentration is much better. Oh yes. Yeah. You see, like not only Brahma, when the Buddha was enlightened, the Buddha said, "O house builder, thou art seen. Thou will not build this house again." That means the maker of this body, the Buddha has seen. So the Buddha has, you can say, the Buddha has seen God face to face. Okay, there's no question. Let's end here.